Hello there, Internet. Hauke here with PSP Advisor. Oftentimes when customers aren't buying what they're selling, I hear especially young entrepreneurs make statements like, people don't like my product, or worse, they don't like me. Let's talk about that for a moment. First off, it almost never is personal, so please do not make it personal. The moment you do, you're only going to get frustrated, and this frustration is going to significantly impede your progress, trying to figure out what's actually going on. You're just going to end up in a downward spiral, so please snap out of it. Also, don't fall prey to the easy out of immediately looking for someone else to scapegoat either. It may feel good at the moment, yay, wasn't me, but that's only temporary and it's not going to solve your problem. You, again, are merely wasting time this way. Instead, try to figure out what's really going on so you can make adjustments and get back on track. We're constantly operating with a rather incomplete understanding of our environment. And in order to stay successful, effective entrepreneurs need to continuously adjust to new and changing information. And that invariably means talking to your target audience, the people you're trying to sell to, your customers. I bet you 9 out of 10 times you'll find you're dealing with one or more of the following 3 reasons. Number 1, they don't really need what you have to offer. They don't like the price you're offering it at, or they just don't know about you. Let's unpack these a bit further. Why would people not need your product or service? In your mind, everyone should want this, right? Well, the answer falls into one of 2 categories. Either you're trying to solve a problem your customers don't actually have, or you're offering a solution that your customers don't really want, or at least not in the way you're currently offering it. For both of these, talking to your customer is the panacea. You also may have selected the wrong customers, but that's a segmentation conversation for another day. The moment you start to believe you know what your customers want and you don't validate your assumptions, you are starting to head down a very slippery slope. A lot of companies have failed because they thought they knew what their customers wanted without ever having talked to a single one of them. Once you clearly understand the problem, you're only halfway there though. The other half is figuring out what design elements are key to making your customers actually want to use your solution. This may be certain features or attributes or cultural and environmental factors that have nothing to do with your product or service per se. Consider the simple 3-stone stove used by about 80% of people in the developing world to cook food. It's terribly inefficient and exposes especially women to the equivalent of smoking several packs of cigarettes a day. Better alternatives have been developed by many folks, but those superior ways of cooking never really caught on. Why is that? It's because those inventors never actually visited with and talked to the women they were designing for. Some of the solutions ended up requiring more attention, others increased the cooking time, and both were things that the already busy women were just not willing to put up with. Or they required tasks normally performed by men, who didn't see the need to pitch in when the old ways of doing things had worked just fine for them. Right, wrong, or indifferent, the proposed solutions added to the perceived burden and therefore were doomed not worth switching to. Finally, a few years back, researchers from India, after collaborating with women who were going to use the stove, came up with a device that reduced smoke and wood use, all while not expecting anyone to change their ways. That device is now starting to gain widespread adoption. By the way, I got this story from the book Invisible Women from Caroline Criado Perez. I'll put a link in the description in case you're interested. So, to recap, do yourself a favor and talk to your customers. Find out what they really need and come up with a solution they actually want to use. The second reason I mentioned earlier was price. Of course, in order to survive as a business long term, you'll have to find a way to break even. So your price needs to at least cover your cost. This is true whether you are a profit or a non-profit organization. I plan to do a separate video on cost and pricing in the future, so this would be a great time to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss that. Hey, it's free. If the price you're setting is higher than what your customers are willing to pay, however, it doesn't really matter if you're breaking even or not. You're just not going to sell anything. What matters is the value your customer perceives your offering to have. And if your price is not in line with that perception, you only have 2 options. You can either lower your price or increase the perceived value. Unless your price was outlandishly high to begin with, lowering it will likely also require some changes to your cost structure, or the business will quickly become unprofitable. We're talking improving processes, using cheaper materials, reducing labor cost, and so on. Increasing the perceived value, on the other hand, is not an easy task, especially for an existing product or service. If the perception is rooted in misconception, then educating your customers, say with a marketing campaign, may be a successful strategy. Alternatively, you could look at concepts like scarcity to make your offering appear more desirable and therefore more valuable. Hey, it worked for diamonds. This, however, often requires repositioning the entire brand. Another aspect is how your competitors are currently pricing what they are offering. Very likely your customers are already buying their current solution to their problem from someone else. Now, that solution probably is different than what you're offering, but it is what you are being compared to, and what anchors the price expectation in your customer's head. You will need to match or beat that price if your offering is somewhat similar. If it is significantly different, then that may be another conversation. But keep in mind, in the eyes of your customer, your offering may not be that different. And that's all that matters. Again, we're talking perception here. So do your market research and figure out what the price expectations are. And know at what point your customers are starting to walk away from you and why. Last but not least, your target audience being unaware of your company and or your product or service is probably the most likely of the three scenarios we talked about today. And it is a situation most entrepreneurs find themselves in, especially in the early phase of their business endeavor. This is where marketing, business development, and overall sales and go-to-market strategies come into play. Now, this is different for every industry and customer segment, but in essence, people first need to know and trust your brand. They then have to be interested enough in your offering to make a purchase. And finally, they should be satisfied enough to become both returning customers and marketing multipliers. Besides creating a good product and service, this aspect of the business probably is what entrepreneurs repeatedly underestimate the most in terms of time, effort, and money. And it's what keeps stretching the hockey stick of most young companies past its breaking point. Having a post on a website somewhere, getting some word of mouth goodwill, or making a few social media posts just isn't gonna cut it. Most of the time, breaking into a market requires a well-timed multi-channel approach and a substantial amount of help from the outside. And often even a good bit of luck, or at least the absence of bad luck. That said, of course, these are just my thoughts. Feel free to add yours in the comments. And if you have a question or topic you'd like discussed, put it there as well. Stay productive, and I'll see you next time.